time for another update on my great tomato experiment. I hadn't really planned to do an update this quickly, but the plants are really growing well and things are happening, and I've got some new things implemented. In this video, I'm going to have a look at the Spider Fermer gravity-fed system. We've got that working for a couple weeks now. I'm going to show you my new drop and lean system. I had to make some special hooks for that. We'll talk about controlling temperature, and we'll talk about how well the plants are doing. And I have a surprise for you. Here are the plants. They're growing quite well. The short ones here are this tall. They've only got about another foot to grow before they'll be too close to the light. Out of the 4 plants, 3 of them are growing pretty much the same way. Same height, same amount of leaves. The leaves look the same. But I got one weirdo growing in here. The one in the back left is about a foot taller than the other 3. The leaves are also not looking very well. I think what they have is edema. The plant isn't able to regulate its water system quite right, and you get these little bumps on the leaves. Parts of the leaves are even going a bit brown. In fact, since it was the biggest one, it was also the first one to make flowers. All of the plants now have at least 2 flower clusters, with the flowers actually opening right now. So what I have been doing is giving the plants a bit of a shake. I don't think that's really necessary, but I want to make sure pollination proceeds properly. The one at the back, the tall one, is going to give me a problem. Because I'm using the lower and lean system, I have to be able to do that with all the 4 plants. There just isn't room in the tent for anything other than that. They all have to lower and lean at the same time. But the big one at the back is a foot taller than it's supposed to be, and this morning it was less than an inch away from the lights. So what I decided to do is top the big one. So it's almost the same height as the other ones now. The leaves on 3 of the plants look quite healthy. Now I think the leaves are a little smaller and there's less of them compared to these plants growing outside, but they're still quite good looking plants. I'm also keeping a close look on suckers. As soon as I see them, I pull them out. There just isn't room in here for more than 1 stem per plant. I waited until the plants were about this tall, and then I started the automatic watering system. So I have 2 plants on that system, and 2 plants are being watered by hand, and I want to compare the 2 systems. The reservoir is outside the tent because it's pretty bulky, and there's a hose that goes through one of these vents into the system here. I set the system up about 2 weeks ago and it's been working quite well. One of my questions was, how much water do I actually get up into the soil? These grow bags are fairly big and there's a lot of soil in here, and I was a little skeptical that the water would rise all the way up. And in fact, I'm correct. The top 3 inches or so, about the length of my fingers, is bone dry. From there down, the soil has a good moisture for the plant. Now, so far, I haven't really seen any difference in growth between hand watering and using the automated system, so the plants must be getting enough moisture. Now, we'll see what happens later on as the root system gets larger and it wants to fill all that space. But for now, it's working quite well. One thing I noticed that with the automatic watering system, the bottom outside of the pots is wet and roots are growing through the pots, and in fact they're going right down inside the pot. They're using the watering reservoir in the same way that a hydroponic system would be working. The roots are growing down in the water and they're going to fill that whole reservoir. But the reservoir is not very big, so that's a bit of a problem. I think what I'm going to have to do is pull them up periodically and make sure the roots don't grow into the hole. I've added a thermometer to this Spider Fermer grow tent. I've got it hanging a little bit below the lights and in the center of the tent. I think that'll give me a good average temperature. Now, best pollination takes place between 70 and 85. Turns out my grow tent's running at about 82, which is perfect. Now, I did adjust the vents on either side of the bottom a little bit to get this temperature. There's enough vents here that I could cool it down if I want, or close the vents and the temperature would rise. So I'm going to control the temperature to make sure I get good pollination. I've also added in the lower and lean system. So what I ended up doing was making a special bracket for here. It's just a thin wire that's wrapped around in 2 loops and hooked into here. The light itself has some convenient hooks here that attach it to the ceiling of the tent. So I'm just using those. There's not really a lot of weight here, so it's not going to affect the light. At the bottom end is a different kind of hook. It's sort of a U-shaped, larger wire that's stiffer. And you just shove that right into the soil near the base of the plant. Try to angle it a little bit. That will make it more secure in the soil. Then take a piece of string, attach it to the bottom hook, wrap it around your plant as you go up, and then attach it here. As the stem grows, simply rotate it around the string, or take the string and wrap it around the stem, whichever you find easier. So basically, as the stem grows, the string just goes around and around, and it doesn't take too much of that string to hold the stem upright. And then once we get to the top, then we'll do the lowering part of the lower and lean method. And I'll show you that in my next program. Once the plants got established, I also increased the amount of light. I now have the Spider Fermer LED light set to 74%. Set at 74%, I get a really good light that is ideal for tomato plants right here in the middle of the tent. Now for the big surprise. The largest plant already has a tomato growing on it. It was the first one to have open flowers, and it looks like the very first flower got pollinated, and I just noticed tiny little tomato coming. Yeah, we still have a couple months to go before we're going to eat this guy, but at least we have tomato. Now, if you'd like to learn more about the equipment I'm using, I have several videos for those, and I have the last program I did on the experiment, and I'll put links to all of that right here. Happy tomato growing.